Iran's disturbing crackdown on Mahsa Amini's death anniversary. On the first anniversary of Mahsa Amini's death, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman arrested by Iran's morality police for allegedly violating the mandatory hijab law, tensions heightened in Iran and around the world. As Iranian authorities arrested Amini's father to stymie commemorations, widespread protests emerged. In Tehran, videos showed locals cheering young protesters, while rights activists like Narges Mohammadi and fellow detainees in Tehran's Evin prison made a symbolic gesture by burning their headscarves. Outside Iran, protesters convened in global cities like Paris, where a garden was renamed in Amini's honor, and Washington, D.C., where crowds chanted, "Say her name, Mahsa Amini," near the White House. Last year's protests over Amini's death resulted in over 500 fatalities, with 71 minors among those killed. US President Joe Biden reflected on the international impact, stating Massa's story did not end with her brutal death. She inspired a historic movement, woman, life, freedom, and that has impacted Iran and influenced people across the globe. Um, so Armin, come back. Beautiful. I thought it was really important for us to cover the what actually happened in Iran on Masa Amini's 1 year anniversary of her death, which was last weekend. And so we saw some protest activity, and I wanted to know what you saw, what you heard from our community in Iran, and also what the reactions have been. Because we've talked about it a little bit like privately behind the scenes. But I thought it'd be really, really valuable to share your insight with our community because I know that our community, particularly, cares a lot about this issue. So, tell us what you know about activities that we're seeing in Iran on September 16th.
Okay, so um, it was a lot lower than so many people were promising. It was, but it happened. So people did show up in protest, and a lot of pro-government people were saying that nothing would happen, and a lot of anti-government opposition, you know, were saying that people will show up in millions, and this will be the last day. And we on our Persian Atheist Republic channel, like sane people, were advocating to please do not overpromise. This is going to be because a lot of people were thinking on the anniversary, a lot of people will show up, and we were like, well, that's insane because the government will be ready. Like this is the first wave of the protest when it happened after Mahsa's killing. It caught the government off by surprise. This one, they knew the anniversary would be something that a lot of people would want to do something about it. They want to come, so they were prepared. They had everybody ready. Like there was like the military presence in the streets were all over the place. So they were completely ready. So obviously there was and a lot of people also knew that there would be a lot of the government was ready to respond, so a lot of people were scared to show up. So given all of that, I didn't expect a lot of people to show up, and I was advocating on our Persian channel, for example, to a lot of people that when you keep over promising to people and something less happens, you're making people lose hope. But if you lower the expectation and something more happens, that's the way that you should go forward with this. Because what happened on the anniversary, I was selling it as a success because people did show up, which the way I was explaining it is like with all that preparation, with all the military presence, the government could not shut down the protests. And this is how you should have looked at it, because the only way that you made you turned this into a loss was because you promised so much to people. But if you looked at it from a different perspective, that if anything happened, that would still be a win because it showed that the people still have power to have some protests, even with all that preparation. That means that when the government isn't ready like that, people still are able to do something even bigger. Because the anniversary of Mahsa Mahsa's killing is never going to be like the time Mahsa, the main characteristic of what happened was that it was sudden, it was, you had the element of surprise. So if that is to repeat itself at some point, it would require the element of surprise as well. And an anniversary, based on definition, does not have the element of surprise, right? So that's one thing. So yeah, so basically the summary is that there were protests, but much less than so many people expected it. I said that the fact that there was any protest was still a win. Another thing that I could tell you is that the son of the previous king of Iran, who's considered to be the main figure in the most popular figure when it comes to Iranian opposition against the Islamic Republic. Some people consider him to be the prince, the crown prince. They call him the crown prince. So Reza Pahlavi. This was a significant moment for him because he came out and gave, for the first time, a call out for people to show up in the streets. And people say, well, this is, a lot of people kind of challenge him as him being the leader of the opposition or not being the leader of the opposition. So this was a test to see if people respond to him. And it kind of failed, I think, because he gave a specific chant for people to give, and there was only one video I saw that people used that chant. So
Oh,
it didn't work out very well for him. So it kind of, in response to him asking people to come out and give a certain chant, there was not that big of a response. So yeah, so there's that.
yeah. Secular
Yeah.
Sakai gave the lion,
Yeah.
sun, and sword emojis, saying "Zan Zandagi Azadi." Um, do There's probably a lot of people that are wondering, like, where do you think this is headed next? What do you think?
Okay, so I think that the way we should look at this is, okay, things could change dramatically. How I do personally, I think the chances of a toppling by the people overnight, that scenario is unlikely. But again, um, things change, right? Like the factors change, and when you make predictions, your predictions are so loose because we're talking about social issues that are dependent on so many things. Like, for example, if you saw the Romanian Revolution, things seemed like completely in the hands of the government, and overnight, all of a sudden, something happened that made the whole thing uh, crumble, right? But based on what the factors are like right now, what I am but I see likely it's a soft revolution rather than a hard revolution, right? So a soft revolution, a hard revolution looks like this. A hard revolution looks like people come into the streets in millions and overpower the armed forces, and the government falls, and the people come and they introduce a new government. And the people in the previous government that were responsible for human rights violations, they go on trial. That's what we call, at least in Iran, we call a hard revolution. A soft revolution, on the other hand, is a revolution that the people come and put pressure on the government. There is a fear of a collapse, but the collapse does not happen in the way that I described it. So the threat of a hard revolution makes a soft revolution possible. And a soft revolution happens because the people's power is slowly increasing relative to the government's power. And the government, not because it wants to, but because it's forced to by the people, keeps changing its characteristics one by one, to the point that everything changes, to the point that it's not what it was before. And I think this is a more likely scenario. However, there are a couple of things that, if it happens, that might change the scenario from a soft revolution to a hard revolution. One of them would be the death of Khamenei. Another one would be, and I've been saying the same thing for the past 3 years. These are the three events that could turn this from a soft revolution to a hard revolution. The death of Khamenei, satellite internet becoming completely accessible in Iran, or a major drop in the price of oil and gas. One of these three, one of them, two of them, or all three of them together will increase the chances of a complete toppling of the government. But right now, I don't think that's likely, but things can change. Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do! And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.